Welcome back for a new top 10 list. And this time we are looking at, in my personal opinion, 10 of the best 2.5D fighting games of all time. So, of course, that means 3D graphics, whether it be traditional, cel shaded, combined with obviously plays like a 2D fighting game. So, with that said, should be an interesting list. Also, at the end, I have an announcement of 3 videos, special videos coming out in the next month. So, with that said, coming in first today, music of choice in the background, I chose music from a 2.5D fighting game, that being from Street Fighter Cross Tekken. So, with that said, first, a couple of honorable mentions of games that didn't quite make the list of the top 10. First, Mortal Kombat 2011. Killer Instinct Gold on the N64. And yes, it does meet the proper criteria. Also, King of Fighters 14. Samurai Showdown, the remake. And the last of the honorable mentions, Street Fighter 5. Well, take it back, and there's one more honorable mention, that is Dragon Ball FighterZ. So with that said, coming in at number 10 is arguably one of the most underrated 2.5D fighting games. Definitely in modern day fighting games in my opinion. And that is coming at number 10, Fighting EX Layer, which is a superb game, I might add. If you are a fan and grew up with the Street Fighter EX series, you'll definitely like, of course, Fighting EX Layer, which is now available on more than just Sony. It's available, of course, on PC, and recently also brought over to Nintendo. So, with that said, I do highly recommend, if you've never played Fighting EX Layer, give it a shot. Plus, it's cool they have Terry Beauregard as a guest character. Coming in at number 9 is, well, the game that the music is from. Coming at number 9 for me personally of 2.5D games I really like, I have to give 9th place to Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Comes in at number 9. As I've said before, I think it's an criminally underrated game, and I think it deserves more love than it gets. Coming in at number 8 is probably one of the youngest games. Now keep in mind, when I look at stuff, I look at whether it be how good the graphics are, the art style, whether it be how good the gameplay is, as well as just in general. It's going to be a combination of many different factors, and a little bias mixed in. But for me, coming in at number 8 is from, of course, the Masters over at Arc System Works. Coming at number 8 for me is Granblue Fantasy Versus, which is obviously going to be on this list given it was my number 1 game of 2020. So with that said, coming in at number 7 is a great game and would be the actual first NetherRealm game I would actually ever pick up. Coming in at number 7 is the first Injustice Gods Among Us. Comes in 7th place. It doesn't make it any higher, only because a few factors. Gameplay-wise, it still plays very good. I just don't like the look overall. There's too much browns and grays and stuff in the art style, though that would plague a couple of fighting games. One other, but that's one of the things I think it helped make Injustice 2 and stuff stand out, because of how much more colorful and vibrant it was. Coming in at number 6 is the only tie on the list. It's a tie between Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, and tied with it at number 6 is Mortal Kombat 11. One, I like the presentation, the interesting art style that they would go with Street Fighter 4, as well as, on the other hand, if you want a much more highly detailed game, but very bright and colorful, Mortal Kombat 11 is definitely that game, in my opinion. Though the gameplay may be a bit slow, it's still a very solid game in my opinion. I still really enjoy it, and the fact it has some of the best netcode also doesn't hurt. Coming in at number 5, just barely making it above, is another game from, of course, the devs and stuff over at NetherRealm. Coming in 5th place is Injustice 2, just barely beating out Mortal Kombat 11 as well as Injustice Gods Among Us. Yeah, for me, Injustice 2 is arguably my second favorite NetherRealm game. And of 2.5D games, it is great, as I said. Like, the story mode is where Injustice 2 really shines, in my opinion. Though, I'll admit I also really have enjoyed gameplay aspects of characters like, obviously, Black Manta, as I've said before. As well as I've enjoyed Raiden of guest characters and other things as well. But, at the end of the day, Injustice 2 comes in 5th. Coming in 4th place, I'm sure, will be somewhat controversial opinion, though I'm used to that. For me personally, 4th favorite 2.5D game is, of course, from Capcom, and in my opinion, one of the most overly hated and one of the more underrated fighting games in the past many years. For me, coming in 4th place is Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite at 4th. So, congratulations, MVCI. You deserve it, not to mention, in my opinion, Infinite has the best designed boss in the entire Marvel crossover series. Just my opinion, but speaking as also a very biased Mega Man X fan, I'm going to be very biased defending Ultron Sigma, being a pretty big Uber Sigma fan for many years. Next, coming in at number 3, arguably my favorite game from NetherRealm, definitely the best of the 2.5D era, definitely Mortal Kombat series, and one of the easily best fighting games, period. But yeah, making it in 3rd place for me, a favorite 2.5D fighters, Mortal Kombat X, without a shadow of a doubt. One doesn't hurt the fact it has some of my favorite characters like Shinnok, as well as Tremor, Triborg, the specifically Sector variant. And the story mode of X is amazing. I, on occasion, usually make it annually. I play the story mode at least once a year. Just revisit the beauty of that story. And one of the best, and in my opinion, Shinnok, most underrated MK villain, period. Next, coming in at number 2, coming in for the silver of 2.5D fighters. Coming in 2nd place is, well, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 comes in 2nd place of 2.5D games. Arguably, it's basically been in a deadlock for being my favorite, of course, fighting game of the past decade, of the 2010s specifically. It held that spot for about 4 or 5 years until it started in a deadlock, though eventually would lose to what is arguably my number 1 favorite 2.5D game of all time. But yeah, there's nothing I can honestly say other about Ultimate Marvel 3, which is arguably my favorite of the Marvel crossover games. And there's nothing hard to say about that one. Coming at number 1, from, of course, Microsoft, as well as Double Helix was involved in its creation, and many other people and stuff. And I just want to quickly also say, before the obvious number 1 spot, hashtag bring back KI. So now you know. Coming at number 1, personal favorite 2.5D fighting game of all time goes to Killer Instinct, which was the only reason I ever got in the first place a X1 was only for KI. And of course, right now this month is going on my 5th annual KI tournament. Hopefully enjoying it. But with that said, of course, round 1 of the tournament is over. And now we start round 2 of the tournament. But I hope you enjoyed the music in the background, and also leave a comment below. Tell me, what is your personal favorite 2.5D fighter of all time? I'm curious to see what some people's opinions are on this, because people always bring up 2D fighters, people bring up 3D fighters, but people don't usually bring up 2.5D. They just count under like 2D or whatever. But I feel they are a subgenre of fighting games that deserve their own category. To me, there's 2D fighters, 2.5D fighters, and then traditional 3D fighters. But that's how I look at things, and everybody has their own opinion. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time, and the 3 special quick announcements are, have a little flip-through / review coming on Volume 1 of the interesting manga series known as Gun, which I'm sure you recognize this little orange dinosaur from Tekken 3. Yep, this is actually where he comes from. And the other 2, hopefully I don't get in trouble with Udon, but whatever. The 2 comics videos I have, Spawn Universe, Issue 1, and Sci-Fi and Fantasy Special of Street Fighter from Udon Comics. Hopefully Capcom and Udon don't do anything. Cross my fingers and cross your fingers that nothing happens, but these are 2 comic book videos in the works. So I'll see you soon enough.